Hello, and welcome to the Libri Labra book club. I'm joined today by my husband, John, aka BookTube Hubby, and by Tom, book club VIP member. Before we kind of jump into things, just so you guys know, if you ever want to join us on camera for the discussion, you can do that by becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/Libri Labra. And there's a few other perks like behind the scenes and being part of a Facebook chat where we kind of talk about the media we're consuming. And then you also get put into a rotation to help us pick the books that we're going to be reading for the year. So this is going to be the discussion for our February pick, which was The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about why that was on your TBR or?
Well, I know there's a movie out now,
Yes.
and I also read, which I loved, the Underground Railroad. So I thought, I knew we both had it, so that was also a factor. And it's fairly short.
We also
And
read
it was Black History Month, so all that combined.
all that. We also read Harlem Shuffle, and then I think there's a part 2 to that just came out.
Yes.
Recently. So we are going to kind of do initial thoughts, and then we will jump into spoiler territory. So if you haven't read the book, go read it, come back and watch this video later, and then you can leave us a comment in the comments. But John, I will start with your initial thoughts.
I don't know. I don't know what I had going in. I just knew it was a Colson Whitehead book, and it was just going to be good. So I was just looking forward to seeing what you had to talk about this time.
How about you, Tom?
I was surprised to find out. Never mind, that's later.
Go ahead.
Well,
what's that?
No, he said I'll talk about that later.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are certain authors, Colson Whitehead included, that I would say, all right, I will read something by him because I really liked at least one of his books. That being, I guess, I said the Underground Railroad. So, just looking at the covers and such, so you tell what it's going to be about. And but he does some things which I thought were surprising. So I'll just leave it at that.
I knew that it was a fictional book, but kind of based on the true story of a Florida school.
Right.
So I was intrigued by that one because I'm in Florida, and also just, I don't know, would this be considered like historical fiction in a sense?
I think so.
So I don't know. I was just really intrigued by that. So, and I know that I liked Harlem Shuffle. So I also have a friend who read the book and actually gifted it to me because the movie was coming out. So I wanted to make sure to read that before I ended up watching it. Now, I feel like I do struggle to kind of talk about books with like super heavy topics. So I figured today I would use some discussion questions.
Okay.
And I am getting these off of bookriot.com. And so the first question is, do you think Elwood was a naive character, and were his ideas about hope and change too simple? You can go first.
I mean, too naive. I think that's that's loaded because everybody is naive at some point. You got to learn eventually, and then you don't become. But I mean, when you go into a situation you don't know what you're expecting, the naivety is just definitely going to be there.
Okay, so you do think he was naive?
I mean, I still have this. I look around and I feel bad about the way humans are treating each other right now, and I still have the same hope that we can pull out of this. But I don't know. Naivety is, I guess, subjective. I don't think about being too naive, though. I don't know if that's a.
What do you think, Tom?
I'm not sure he's so much naive, although compared to his friend, Nat, was it? His buddy. you know, his buddy was certainly street smart, more street smart than he was. But the thing about Elwood, I think, is that he believed what he was taught. He believed in the system. You know, oh, the lawyer's going to help me. He's going to do this for me, or oh, I'll get this, and this will happen, and this. And it's like, no, that's kind of the point of the book. It doesn't, and that's why it needs to be fixed.
So that's why he is too naive. I see. Okay.
So, but it's kind of thing where also too, he stands up for what he believes in. You know, listening to all the Martin Luther King lectures that his grandmother got him. Yeah, I'm sure it helped with that. But he's willing to stand up and say, no, this is wrong. Like he was going through all the protests and such. So again, I'm not sure naive. Maybe at the beginning, but there's a certain steeliness to his character that you have to admire.
Right.
You know.
And I think that's kind of how I feel, that I feel like naive just kind of implies just complete ignorance, but I don't think wanting things to be different is necessarily like naive.
Right.
And I also think there's like a definite strength to even acknowledging like, this is the system, but I'm not going to allow it to change me because I control who I am, and like I control my integrity and my dignity and like all these other things. And that to me is strength. I don't think his ideas about hope and change were too simple either. I think like really it should be that simple. I understand that it's not, but it should be. So maybe go ahead.
Maybe the description naivete is too simple. Yeah, that's like maybe a small part of it. There's a whole lot more going on than that. So, and I wouldn't fix on naivete.
I know that growing up, I got tired of hearing people tell me that I was too nice. And it just infuriated me. And so, like, what do you even say to that? But after a certain point, I just got so angry that I was like, no, I'm going to think of something to say, and that's what I'm going to respond with from now on. And my response was, I'm not too nice. The rest of the world just isn't nice enough. And so that's kind of how I feel in this situation, where it's not that it's too simple. It's that maybe like everybody else is not grasping how simple it could be. Because I don't know. So Elwood admires his teacher, Mr. Hill, in part because of his ability to take the past and connect it to the future. Were there things in the novel that you found to be relevant to today's culture?
Well, the fact that when Elwood gets picked up, by that officer, he's just sitting in the car, and okay, well, you're automatically guilty because of where you're at, regardless of what you're doing at the time. Writing while being black, maybe I guess is dated. So I'm not sure that stuff goes on a lot these days.
I don't know. I don't want to talk about how political things have gotten. Like it's humans are not changing, and it's sad.
Well, but one of the points of the book is that they do. It just goes really, really, really slowly.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's just like the pace of slowly. It's like it seems like it takes a couple of steps forward and like a bunch of steps back, which it seems like we're in a period where
a regression, shall we say?
Yeah. But I mean, what's relevant to today's culture? I feel like in this book there was, obviously racism and obviously like a sense of white supremacy, and that seems very relevant to today's culture and some of the battles that we're facing right now.
But the change I was talking about, like there's like right at the end of the novel,
Mhm.
when what's his friend? Sorry, what's his friend's name again? Is it
The guy, I think it was, wasn't it Tucker?
I think it was. I was thinking
Wait,
Tucker.
give me the book for a second. Check it. I thought it was Tucker.
Curtis.
Curtis? Yes, that sounds better.
But
But
Curtis was his last name,
yeah,
right?
it
Yeah.
was Elwood
Elwood
Curtis.
Curtis, yeah, but
Yeah, but he took it.
Turner.
Curtis, yeah,
Tucker was close, but it wasn't it.
nope. But okay, major spoiler coming up here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so we're definitely in spoiler
Yeah.
territory
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah, if you don't want to hear it, this is it's like right at the end of the novel, and you will be pissed if you hear it if you're going to read it. So, but number one, it shows that like change is possible, but it comes really, really slowly when Turner goes into that hotel and sit wherever you want. Whereas before it was whites only.
Mhm.
Number one, and number two, it's like he finally illustrates like one of the differences between Elwood and Turner in that you know it doesn't register with Turner how big of a deal this would have been to Elwood. It's like a different reaction. So that was one of my favorite parts of the book is the way he wrote that.
It just seems so unacceptable for um, change to come so slowly, and
Mm-hmm.
the messaging that I just keep hearing over and over again, like right now, is that all of the rights that we do have are because people fought for them.
Right.
People fought for them.
So it looks like it's time to fight again. But I don't know the point I was just gonna say. Just floated away.
That's all right. But yeah, it is hard to discuss this book without mentioning the current situation. So it's a fine line, I think.
The Hardy Boys mystery series was mentioned quite often throughout the novel. Do you think this was simply Whitehead's way of describing the entertainment culture of that time, or do you think there was something deeper going on? I have never actually read the Hardy Boys, so I just know like Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew. I know they were kind of in like the same category, and maybe I read a Nancy Drew, but um, I don't know enough about the Hardy Boys to know if there was anything deeper happening with the references.
So was this a reference towards him being one of the people actually writing down and taking notes and doing some of the investigating from the inside?
Mm-hmm.
That was the only thing I took from that. Not even reading the Hardy Boys from the past either.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is all about investigation and such. And, again, this is Elwood's belief in the system. He gives the papers to Turner, who gives the papers to the state. And the only thing that really happens is he gets his ass pulled. The second time. So, but yeah, it's essentially two boys who go on an adventure and they try to solve things. But this is like a more modern, maybe more realistic tale than.
There was only two boys in the Hardy Boys.
I thought there were only two, but
Okay,
I never read it.
I never read it
so-
either. For some reason, it was like I
We
don't
all got
know.
homework to
Maybe
do.
because like I was thinking about like the Babysitters Club or something. But there was a lot of them.
Mhm.
There was a lot of them, so I assumed that there was like
We had them as a kid. I probably
Hardy
read them
Boys
as a
or
kid,
something.
but I and I could be wrong because it's been a while, clearly. But I remember two kids being on the cover. Whether that was what was in the book, because covers can lie, obviously. But it's the kind of thing where, again, bordering on today's situation, all of the entertainment was by white folks for white folks,
Mm-hmm.
and I think who tells the story matters. So
Absolutely.
Damn, the different layers to this book is kind of awesome. because I mean it is called the Nickel Boys versus the Hardy Boys,
right?
like so. Okay.
What is your assessment of life in the free world versus life in Nickel? I mean, for them, it didn't sound like it was all that much different. Like, I know they wanted to be in the free world, but it's not like, maybe, I don't know, maybe it was just like more open. So even though all of the things that did happen to them in Nickel could still happen to them in the real world, there was more space for it not to happen as frequently. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
I mean,
they
a little.
were in close quarters at Nickel, whereas they wouldn't be in the outside world.
Nickel being a concentrated. That's ridiculous.
So it's not like they could have encountered the abuse in the free world versus Nickel, but they seemed more likely to be dealing with it at Nickel. So
it never really says, but I know it says to the black population that they would sell their food to the local businesses and such. But I don't think he ever said that about the white kids, that they had their meals in the same way. I would think so, because it would seem if they're greedy, they're going to get all they can for it. But I maybe I missed that part.
What is your assessment of the free world versus life in Nickel?
I don't. My brain was somewhere else for a second. The idea that they're dealing with a concentrated form of racism and torture in Nickel is kind of shitty. Like it's a school for reform for boys, but it was basically just a.
I mean, it sounds like the prison system is what it sounded like, and they were just kind of making them do community service, which was just like free labor.
But in a certain sense, though, you may as well just ask, well, what's the difference between living on Earth and living on Mars? Well, it's like, well, I've never lived on Mars, so I have no thing to compare it to. Especially being white. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a valid question.
Well, I just think calling it a school was just BS, because it sounded like a private prison essentially. Like,
well,
yeah, they were severely punishing, abusing. Mm-hmm. There was solitary confinement. Just like the conditions seemed rather.
The for reform part is that part of it. It's a school for reform. Yeah,
but like, how many people? Prison. Okay, let's be realistic here. Like, let's think about the U.S. prison system versus I don't know, another country that actually does reform people.
Right. No, we just put them in a cell and make them work. Over there, they actually rehabilitate them.
Yep. And so completely different, just a completely different way.
Teach them something completely different. Instead, we just nope, you're a grunt now.
I think that's a different issue, a more modern issue of, we are all about retribution. We do not care about repatriation or, bringing people back into the fold, because we seem to be all about judging a person by the worst thing they ever did, regardless of when it was.
Right.
So to complete my thought, though.
I'm sorry.
It was saying that it was a reform school, but even all the people at Nickel were like, people don't make it out of here.
Yeah. Right.
So what are you reforming? You're not reforming anything if they're all going to end up in a grave behind the school.
Well, some do, so that makes it look good. But sometimes they're just like, oh, well, yeah, you'll end up on Boot Hill if you run out of it. So.
Well, I mean, Elwood had high hopes talking about, going to college after that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. It's just a shitty situation to be in, to be at that school. Um, Right. It says acts of sexual violence at Nickel are discussed in the novel, but only briefly and never with any detail. Why do you think this is?
Generally, because I think victims of that situation don't actually speak up as often as they do, and you don't hear about it as
You don't.
much.
Yeah, I would
So
imagine you don't hear the details.
when it gets passed along that, basically when it's mentioned in this book, it's in passing of someone thinking about, okay, maybe I can avoid that situation right now. So it's something that's just they're just it's happened to me. What am I going to do if it happens again? And they're all it's ridiculous, dude. I hate everything about this.
I mean, I would imagine victims are trying to block it out of their head. So
Right. So then it makes it even harder for them to talk about it.
I mean, the thing is, though, to me, is it's like there's so much tragedy going on there. You only have so much mental and physical or emotional capacity to take it in, and so it's like you also have to like budget it. So it's like, okay, so what am I going to include in this novel to make an impact? Not so much that it, it's a fine line, I think. So yes, he does note it. He knows it between the students, and he also notes it between like the house fathers, which is creepier, and the students.
It kind of adds a different layer of when you think about it, when you read through that part of the book and it's mentioned, and you're like, wait a minute, did he just say?
Mm-hmm.
Are you? It's like you had to kind of like put the pieces together yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of adds to the emotional kickback format.
Mm-hmm.
So
in her book club discussion of the Nickel Boys, Roxane Gay expresses her frustration at Whitehead's treatment of the novel's female characters. Do you agree or disagree with her position that the characterization of women in the novel was problematic?
Well, you're a representative woman. What do you think?
if
It being International Women's Day.
perspective, if you're looking at it from how they looked at everything back then, it's different. If you're looking at through today's lenses, yes, we're going to look back and be like, everything about that is fucked up. But that's the way they thought. That's the way they acted. That's certain things. I don't know if there's a certain depiction that we're focusing on at the moment, but it's just the way people were treated back then.
Mm-hmm.
I am embarrassed to admit that, for me, this story was so about the boys that I
didn't even take notice.
No,
right?
I wasn't trying to dissect or pay extra attention to the women in the story.
Well, the only women that I can think of were his grandmother, number one, his mother, Edward's, that is. I can't remember if Nat's mother was mentioned. I think so, but I'm not sure. And there was the one old woman that they did the work for.
Well, and then Millie.
Millie. Oh, yeah, Millie, yes. Yeah, but he says he screwed that up, didn't he? Didn't he have something else?
Maybe that's actually part of it. It's just nobody knew how to treat women because they were around all the boys that got traumatized constantly.
Why do you think Turner changed his mind about giving the letter to the state auditors and escaping Nickel with Elwood?
What was the first time?
So I think the rules that he was trying to tell him is you're going to get out, go alone, take nobody with you. Don't,
okay, yeah.
So he went with him because it's like, dude, you're going to get yourself caught,
killed,
shot, whatever. So he actually felt some sort of responsibility for him, I guess, somehow. God, that whole situation sucks. Put so much meaning in his actually getting out and living life for Elwood.
Right. Yeah, that was one thing narratively I thought was an interesting choice because, in a sort of book like this, I would expect that, okay, here's when this person left this institution, sort of like the leaving day. We saw the entering day, but what about? But he never really shows that. He just shows um, Elwood later on in life, and so it's again hard to tell which character that is
Mm-hmm.
because he never, of course, never says what happens in that final school scene.
I mean, he also had overheard what they said they were going to do to him, to Elwood.
Mm-hmm.
So, he didn't want that to happen. And I guess better to fight your way out and potentially die that way than just stay. And
Right. Let it happen.
Yeah, because he wasn't going to get. Well, that's one thing I want to see the movie because I have no idea how this contraption that he described was set up. And it's like I know it's a fan, and I know somehow the belt is attached to it, but I don't know how it operates. It's just like I get that it causes intense physical pain, but it's just like I just can't visualize in my head how it works. So, but yeah, it was clear that because of this, yeah, it wouldn't be the fan; it would be Blue Hill for him. So to his credit, Turner stepped up and said, "You're gonna get your dumbass killed. Come with me." And of course, when he had like he was prepped. Like we know where the two bikes are. We know where the thing. And of course, it's the big anticlimactic moment where they go end up right back in, or he does anyway. So.
how did you feel about the ending? Were you prepared for the plot twist?
Who could be? If you're over here following Elwood the whole time, thinking he's gonna get out,
Right.
and then his buddy, no, nobody. Why?
I was very much not prepared for the plot twist and just felt like it was soul crushing.
Mm.
Like just to see a character in these horrifying situation and still trying to do like all the right things.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to maintain his own moral compass and sense of self. And I was rooting for him. I wanted him to get out. I wanted him to be the one that exposed the school. I wanted to see some kind of justice. And it sucks that, like, a lot of times nobody gets that justice.
Plus with the time lapse, it's impossible to tell. Okay, is this Elwood? But just a time and age is made in this way, or or is it actually current? It's hard to say, and so I think that's why, right at the very end, his reaction to being in the hotel was such a tell-all. Because if it was Elwood, the reaction would be totally different.
Now I do. When is the movie? Is it out?
It's out.
Okay.
It's out. I understand it's quite good on its own merits, but I haven't looked at it.
I don't know if I'll win the spin, but I wanted to pick it. Right. Once the cat was out of the bag and you realized present day Elwood was actually Turner, how did you feel? When discussing the book, do you find it hard separating the two characters now that you know? And do you think this was intentional by the author?
I didn't realize there was a gap. I didn't actually think that it was Elwood after them leave. I don't know. I didn't. I knew it was Turner living for Elwood. I don't know how. I don't know what.
Well, I did not pick up on it, so.
Yeah, I didn't either. Because I think I literally gasped when I was like, like what?
Yes.
An actual surprise.
I was
Yes.
like, Jesus. I was like, Jesus. Yeah, no. This is really good.
Because one of the things though with Turner is that he would try to live like Elwood because that was his stated goal. So
Right.
how can you tell the difference now? Of course, he wouldn't be going out to protests or anything like that. So, and
What if
I got the feeling that when he was, talking about being out in New York and such, it's like this kind of seems like the neighborhood of the character from his other, like Harlem Shuffle.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing.
So whether they were, there at the same time, maybe it sure sounds that way. Because right around the time when, they started gentrifying that, the area, they cleaned up the garbage and everything else. So I think I didn't think, yes, but I don't know.
I think Turner had a bracelet that said, "What would Elwood do?"
Well, maybe not a bracelet, but it was always in the back of his
Yeah,
head.
yeah. Nah.
Yeah, a mental bracelet, let's say.
Do you think this was intentional by the author? Yeah. I mean, to make them hard to separate, I feel like
Yeah.
is what um, makes the twist so surprising. Um, because you're watching Turner and hearing about Turner, completely assuming that it's still Elwood. So
Yeah, you keep the surprise of the reveal. Plus, like I said, you had poignancy at the end and doing what he did. So 2 wins there in my book.
do you think Turner succeeded in making Elwood proud?
I mean, yeah. Just for the idea that he tried to make Elwood proud, instead of just going about his whole life and then not caring about what Elwood did, but he actually really did want to honor Elwood afterwards. So that was
I think he is self-described, much like Ray Carney from the other book, as bent. Like he's a good person, but there's a little leeway for some stuff. So
Um, in the novel, Whitehead includes various stories of boys who were sent to Nickel. Who do you think this book is about? Is it Elwood, Turner, or all of the Nickel boys?
I don't think it's about either one of them specifically. Maybe their story, maybe their and if it is about all of them, it's really putting a magnifying glass on the school itself or how people were treated then anyway.
mm-hmm. Plus, how many people would read this versus an actual history book of the school in question?
Mhm.
I would say it actually is about the people that were involved, was all of them, not just because it is about a school here in Florida.
Yeah, and something may not have occurred exactly verbatim, but
Right.
something a lot like it, like they did. So I think he's closer to the historical record than he is in the Underground Railroad.
Did you guys read the acknowledgments?
I can't remember.
Uh, no.
Okay, because the author talks about where he pulled things from.
Oh,
And
wait, I did. Yes, Colson Whitehead reads that part.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Yeah. Then I did. And as I say, unless he read it to me, I didn't read it.
So the school is based on the Dozier School for Boys in Marianna, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that the official whitehouseboys.org is the website of Dozier survivors.
Right.
And you can go there for the stories of former students in their own words. And I
Crazy.
didn't get a chance to look that up, but that sounds really intense.
Well, you have a much greater chance of visiting there than I do. Not that you'd want to, but I'm just saying.
Um, but like, I don't know, just thinking about everything that's happening right now and the way I feel like history is being erased. Like these stories are so important,
Mm-hmm.
um, because there's historical record of it. I think I just saw an article recently saying like the Montgomery boycott building or something
Mm-hmm.
was turned into a museum, and like now they're trying to get rid of it or sell it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just I guess while the material is I'm sure very difficult to read,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thankful for the victims being willing to tell their stories and put that someplace that people
Right.
can see so they know that the stuff happened. It
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Or something that's closer to the historical record, which I believe you are reading now, Desiree, or you were anyway, is March, first book.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was a really good series. Unfortunately, Mr. Lewis passed away before he could finish the whole thing. So he finished the trilogy, but then he was working on another, and that's unfortunately when he left. So
Oh. Um, so I think he took a lot from the stories that he read about the victims to kind of incorporate it into this. Um, but I think it's like it's about so much more than one character or even just the Nickel Boys.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's looking at the system at the time and saying, okay, this is what happened to people under this set of conditions and rules and such.
And like how infuriating that must be to tell these stories and then have people look you in the face and be like, racism doesn't exist, racism isn't a thing. um, okay.
Or, Black Lives Matter is racist. It's like, well, if it is, I know a reason for it, and it's not that.
I want to know if there was any form of turnover rate for the people that were hired there because they didn't want to treat people the way they were being treated. Or is it that it was so well known and normal back then that everybody just went along with it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like the way he writes it in the book, he talks about how like generations of people were taught to behave this way, were taught to
Mm-hmm.
treat them that way.
Right.
We're talking about like from slave owners being okay with beating them and just I don't know, like I just
That is the institutionalized part. They have to be carefully taught.
and how do you do that? You do that by othering people.
How do
You
you
do
just
that
hire
by
just those
like
people? Your intake exam? What do you do when this happens? Yes, smack them. No, okay, you're hired. No, man. This crap. All of it.
Well, I think the goal there was to reform these boys into honorable citizens, and however that happened,
Right.
you know, it's fair game.
I mean, if you spin the story, like even because they were saying that there was one guy in there that kind of got along with them and was like, I know you guys are people just like me. You just kind of took a wrong turn somewhere. You know what I mean? So like it's just that I think it's very very much rooted in white supremacy and white people thinking they know best, that they're the best, that they're like better than everyone. And when you convince people that they're better than other people, then they justify things however they justify it. And even that guy who was like, yeah, you're people just like me, was still in there, still doing shit, still like, in that system,
Mhm.
working for it, um, because he felt like he was helping them correct or reform or whatever the case is.
That's some shit, man. That's just as long. That's right along the lines of the priest just pulling out a paddle and say, "This is gonna hurt me as much as it's gonna hurt you."
Did you know priests with paddles?
No.
All right. Okay. All right. Just checking because I didn't. But not that they didn't. I'm just saying.
No, you had rulers.
Anybody
I'm
who's trying to give some sort of
serious.
this, how about that? Maybe it doesn't have to be a priest. That was the wrong look, I guess.
No, they leave that to the nun.
Teacher, I don't know.
I don't know. I struggled a little bit in the book because, and I think he did this in the Underground Railroad also, where there were like time jumps, but not really specified when it was jumping times or even like who the chapter was about, or
Mhm.
that's what we just have to figure out with context. And I kind of struggle when that happens. So
Right.
I do want to try rereading it to see if I notice a
But I
bit
think
more.
it's more straightforward at the same time than
Then
like it's closer to the historical record than Underground. Not that Underground Railroad was far away. It's just I think he added elements to the story, which well, for me, maybe I'm dumb. It's like, well, wait, did this actually happen or not? Sort of a thing. You have to go and look it up.
um, I think we would probably go ahead and do final thoughts.
Okay.
5 stars. Colson's just a great writer. I mean, he did really good things with this. For historical fiction, right? We can't call it that. It's historical, and it's
Well, it is
we
historical.
don't know if it's 100%.
Well, it's not nonfiction because he made
It's
up.
not. It could be someone's story. He just, did his thing.
Mhm.
But it's really good.
He's a good writer.
All right, so John says 5 stars. How about you, Tom?
I gave it 4.25. Only because I've read Underground Railroad, and that was a true 5 star for me. So I can't make it that, but it's really, really good.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, I would also give this 5 stars, and I do want to give it a reread.
Mhm.
And then I definitely want to check out the movie. Although I know that's going to be even more heartbreaking and
Yeah, it'd be a hard watch, I would think.
yeah.
Because it's not one thing to read about, it's another thing to actually
Right.
see it. And it's like, holy crap.
Yeah. So I'm sure I'll cry.
I like having the visual media actually close gaps that my brain didn't make in the book.
Mm-hmm. And it may be different too. And, it may like illuminated part of a story that wasn't talked about in the book, but you could easily see it happening.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing.
And I also appreciate that, I mean, with the rise of anti-intellectualism and just not that there aren't a lot of people reading, but there's a lot of people that are not reading, who are more likely to watch a movie and still hopefully get all
Retain
the
some
same
sort of
emotions
information
and
from it,
information from the story.
Yeah. Learn.
Actually have a bit of empathy.
Yeah.
Really. I don't think that comes from a book, but yeah.
So, all right. So we got 5 stars, 5 stars, and 4.25.
Because I'm on Storygraph now and I can give 4.25. Really give 4.25.
For our next read for the month of March, we are going to be reading On Tyranny, the graphic novel, the illustrated version, by Timothy Snyder. And I know, the original book that's just text is a bit smaller and has been flying off of shelves lately. And I also have like a playlist of him kind of reading from his book and then also talking about it.
Right.
And I had started watching that, but when I found out there was an illustrated version, I was like, I'm getting that. So,
Okay.
and basically
Thanks.
it says
Help me
20
too.
lessons from the 20th century, illustrated by Nora Krug. So that's what we'll be reading for March. So please feel free to join us if you're interested. And I think that's all I got for today. And just one more final reminder, if you ever want to join us on camera during the discussion, you can do that by becoming a book club VIP member at patreon.com/Libri Labra. Outside of that, if you made it this far, thanks for joining us, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Bye, guys.
Fine.
Join us again.